My name is Dylan Rothbein. I identify as Asperger's and dyslexic. I'm a musician and filmmaker, and I have a BA in U.S. history with a concentration in grassroots movements from Empire State College. I'm a grad student at Southern New Hampshire University getting my master's degree in history. In between my BA and my graduate studies, I spent 5 months in Israel preparing for rabbinical school. I've also spent 10 years in the disability rights movement in various capacities. The book that we're going to be reading today is called Haym Solomon, American Patriot by Susan Goldman Rubin and illustrated by David Steinheim. My goal of this reading is for people to be proud of our history and proud of our flag. This book is going to be narrated today by disability rights activist and filmmaker Margot Cole.
My name is Margot. I was born in Russia and adopted. I immigrated to the United States at only 1 year old. I immigrated from Russia the same way Haym Solomon immigrated from Poland. I officially became a U.S. citizen at 6 years old. The newspaper headlines declared the shocking news: General George Washington losing to the British Redcoats. Army greatly distressed, said the article in the New York Gazette and the Weekly Mercury. The troops have no meat, one of Washington's officers reported in the paper. Many eat their shoes, shot pouches, etc. They need food, blankets, uniforms, and boots. Even the horses are hungry. No men ever went through more or greater hardships. However, we are Americans and American soldiers. In January 1776, Haym Solomon sat reading the New York Gazette in his house on Broad Street. How can I help? He wondered. I am only a Jewish immigrant. Haym had just come to America from Poland. Although he missed his family and friends, he wanted more than anything to live in a free country. As a young man, Haym had traveled throughout Europe working in the banks. He learned how to count money, save money, and loan money. He knew the price of silver and gold and understood what money from many other countries was worth. For instance, he could exchange German marks for Russian rubles, or Polish guldens for French francs. Along the way, he learned many languages: French, German, Russian, Italian, and English. And of course, he knew Hebrew and Polish. Now in New York, he put his knowledge to good use. In those days, colonists used English pounds and shillings as well as American paper dollars and pennies. Immigrants also brought money from their native countries and kept using it in America. Haym was able to exchange or loan money for everyone. He was able to talk with his immigrant customers in their own languages. People found him to be honest and fair. They liked his good manners and gentle way of speaking. At this time, the 13 American colonies belonged to the British Empire. However, King George III of England did not treat the colonists well. He forced Americans to pay extra money called taxes for ordinary things like newspaper, playing cards, and tea. So the colonists declared war on England, saying they wanted to be free and rule their own country. Among the many people who wanted change was Haym. One day, someone knocked on Haym's door. It was his friend Alexander McDougall. I'm leading a group called the Sons of Liberty, said Alexander. We secretly fight the English. A couple of years ago, when an English ship arrived here in New York, we dressed up as Indians and dumped the cargo of tea overboard. Haym sat forward and listened. Do you want to join us? Said Alexander. I must warn you it will be dangerous. Once the British caught me for printing pamphlets and threw me in jail. Haym thought carefully. He certainly did not want to get into trouble. On the other hand, he loved his new country. He had come all the way to find freedom. Yes, Haym told Alexander, I will join your group. What do you want me to do? In June 1776, Haym closed his profitable business. He left New York with a wagon full of supplies for the American army. Haym rode many miles to Fort Tigonganga at Lake George, New York. There he coat, set up a tent to house coats, shoes, boots, blankets, and other things the soldiers needed badly and had no other way of getting. Every month, Haym paid a fee for the right to sell these goods from his tent. That money went to a fund for widows, orphans, and retired soldiers. Good work, Mr. Solomon, said General Philip Schuyler, the officer in command. Haym had even brought eyeglasses packed in little wooden boxes and tied with ribbons. Try these on, he said to men who were having trouble reading. Local farmers also brought goods, meat, vegetables, and berries to Haym's tent to sell to the soldiers. In April of the following year, word came that the Redcoats, as the British soldiers were called, were going to attack New York City. General Washington and his troops were far north in Massachusetts and had to journey quickly to New York. As soon as Haym heard the news, he packed up and headed home for New York too. By this time, by the time Haym arrived, the British had won the battle and had captured the city. On September 20, 1776, in the middle of the night, a fire broke out. Flames swept through the city, smoke filled the air. By dawn, more than 400 buildings had burned down. British officers immediately suspected that the fire had been started by the Sons of Liberty. Rumors had spread that these patriots would rather see the city burn down than turn it over to the British. Let's get the Sons of Liberty, cried the British. They rounded up the rebels, arrested them, and shot some of them on the spot. Haym was now a well known member of the Sons of Liberty. So soldiers rushed to his house and pounded on the door. Open up, you're under arrest. The British marched Haym off to a jail called the Old Sugar House. It was anything but sweet. A broken roof let in the rain and soaked the prisoners. Cold and wet, Haym came down with a bad cough. He was moved to another jail, the Provost prison. This one was even worse. Prisoners crowded the cell. Hessian soldiers from Germany guarded them. The Hessians did not care about the American Revolution. They were career soldiers who fought other people's wars to earn money. The British had hired them to fight on their side and brought them over to America. Haym understood German, so he struck up a conversation. Guten Tag, he said to the guards. Hello. When they gave him a piece of bread, he said, Dankeschön, thank you. The Hessian soldiers admired Haym's ability to speak different languages and told their commanding officer, General Heister, about him. General Heister realized that Haym could be useful as an interpreter. Haym could turn the Hessians' words into English, and he could translate the British orders into German. The British told Haym that the only way he could gain freedom was by working for the enemy. General Heister released Haym from jail on parole and gave him a job buying supplies for the British prison. Haym agreed to help them, but secretly vowed to use this opportunity to help other prisoners escape, and he did. As Haym worked with the Hessian guards, he became friends with them. Listen, he said, why don't you run away? Pennsylvania is giving free land to any Hessian soldier who leaves the British Army. Many of the guards, especially the younger ones, took Haym's advice and deserted. General Heister had no idea what Haym was up to and rewarded him for his services by freeing him. Haym opened a new office on Broad Street near City Hall. Around this time, he met Rachel Franks, the daughter of a Jewish merchant. They were married on July 6, 1777. The following summer, their son Ezekiel was born. Meanwhile, the war raged on. The American and the British natives captured each other's cargo ships. Supplies were scarce. Nevertheless, Haym found a way to obtain and sell goods such as bread and rice. He kept working undercover for the Sons of Liberty. Haym helped more prisoners escape from British jails and often hid them in his own house. In August 1778, another fire broke out in New York down at the docks. English ships burned, the redcoats again blaming Sons of Liberty. That night, as Haym and Rachel finished dinner, they heard soldiers marching towards the house. Someone pounded on the door. Open in the name of the king. Stay with the baby. Haym shooed Rachel into the other room. He opened the front door. You're under arrest for treason, a redcoat sergeant said. You are a spy. Please let me say goodbye to my wife and baby, Haym said. Make it fast, said the sergeant. Haym hurried to the bedroom, quickly hid some gold coins in his clothes, put on his jacket, grabbed his gold pocket watch, and kissed Rachel and their baby goodbye. The redcoats took Haym back to Provost Prison and threw him into a cell with 20 other men. Haym's fellow prisoners asked for news about the war. Is General Washington winning? Will he ever recapture New York? Haym told them what he knew. That night he slept on the cold floor. His terrible cough came back. His chest hurt with every breath. A few days later, the door to the cell opened and a guard led him away. Haym appeared before the prison warden and 4 British officers. They read the charges against him. Haym Solomon committed treason. He sheltered spies and gave them information. He plotted to burn the king's fleet of ships in the harbor in New York. He secretly communicated with General Washington. Some of the charges were true, others were false. Finally, the court let him speak. I admit that I tried to serve my country in whatever way I could, he said. The officers left the room to decide his fate. When they returned, one of them said, we find the accused, Haym Solomon, guilty. Condemn, we condemn the prisoner to be hanged by the neck until dead at dawn tomorrow. Haym was taken back to jail and kept in a cell by himself. During the night, a young Hessian guard kept an eye on him. Haym spoke to him in German. He held out his watch and unwrapped the gold coins. I'll give you these if you leave my cell door open, he said. Dessert. Run north of New York to the Americans at Dub's Ferry. I'll wait for an hour to give you a chance to get away. The guard took the watch and coins. In the darkness, Haym heard a key turning in the lock. Holding his breath, he sat and waited. Then Haym tried the door. Open. He slipped down to the cellar, where the warden kept food for the prisoners. Finding the cellar doors, he lifted one of them and felt the cool night air. Haym climbed up and then ran across the street to the alleyway. He was free. Haym raced through the streets toward his house. As he approached, he saw British soldiers standing at the door. They were already searching for him. I can't go home, Haym said to himself. If I do, I'll put Rachel and the baby in danger. So he turned and zigzagged through the streets, out of the city, past farms and fields, through forest. At last he reached Dub's Ferry, where the American troops were stationed. Haym was shocked when he saw the condition of the poor soldiers. You are dressed in rags, he said. You don't even have uniforms. There is no money for uniforms, said the soldiers. We don't have enough to eat, and we are not getting paid, so we can't send money home to our families. How can we keep on fighting? Then and there, Haym formed a plan. He went to the commanding officer, his old friend, General Alexander McDougal. Please give me a pass to Philadelphia, said Haym. I can raise money to feed and clothe our troops. Haym knew that Philadelphia was the biggest and busiest city in all of the colonies. Alexander gave Haym a pass to show to American soldiers who might stop him along the way. For days and days, Haym walked a distance of 100 miles. He thought of his wife and baby. Would he ever see them again? As Haym arrived in Philadelphia, a religious man who looked for a synagogue and found Congregation Mikveh Israel. Members of the congregation liked Haym and helped him get started in business again. He opened an office on Front Street near the busy docks. With his knowledge of foreign languages, he was able to talk to ship captains from different countries and trade with them. Representatives from France met with Haym in coffee houses and arranged to loan him money for the American Patriots. We trust you, they said. Haym's friends from Congregation Mikveh Israel helped Rachel and the baby come to Philadelphia. Haym was overjoyed. His family settled into a house on Front Street where his office was located. Soon, Haym and Rachel had two more children, daughters Sarah and Deborah. Now Haym worked harder than ever before. Business hardly gives me time to think about what I am doing, he wrote to a friend. Haym worked so hard that his cough came back. Coughing spells hurt his throat and chest, so Rachel called for the doctor. Rest, the doctor ordered. I don't think I can rest, said Haym. There is too much to do. More and more people heard about Haym. One of them was Robert Morris, a Philadelphia businessman and patriot. Morris had been one of the signers of the Declaration of Independence in 1776. Now, in 1781, General Washington had appointed Morris as Minister of Finance. Washington gave Morris the full power to raise the money to carry on the war. Morris invited Haym to meet at his house. On June 8, 1781, Morris wrote in his diary, I agreed with Mr. Haym Solomon to assist me. Haym became Morris's broker. He received loans or bills of exchange from France, Spain, and Holland to gain money for General Washington's troops. Usually he charged nothing for his services. In the summer of 1781, Morris met with Washington at his headquarters of New York. Washington needed money right away to lead a sneak attack against the British in Yorktown. They agreed there was only one person who could do the job, Haym Solomon. The story goes that on Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, Haym was attending services at Mikveh Israel. A messenger came in and asked for him. Robert Morris sent me, the messenger said to Haym. He needs you to sell 2 bills of exchange for $20,000. Members of the congregation gasped. For shame, they were shocked to hear talk about money on the holiest day of the year for Jews. Haym, however, knew that at no other time would he have so many people gathered at once. He asked the rabbi for permission to speak. Let us all help General Washington, he said. Within a few minutes, Haym raised all the necessary money, including $3,000 of his own. Thanks in part to Haym, Washington won the battle at Yorktown on October 19, 1781, and the British surrendered. The war was finally over. Hurrah! Shouted Americans everywhere. In the following years, the new American government led by George Washington still needed money. Haym helped establish a national bank, the Bank of North America, and continued working with Morris. In 1784, Haym's health grew worse. His bad cough developed into a serious sickness, tuberculosis. On January 6, 1785, Haym died. He was 45 years old. A few months later, his wife Rachel gave birth to their 4th child, a son named Haym Moses. Haym Solomon left his family penniless. He had given away or loaned almost all of it he had for America. However, his efforts earned him an honorary place in history. Although Haym probably never met General George Washington, he stands beside him today in a statue. A bronze memorial in Chicago shows 3 American patriots clasping hands. Robert Morris, George Washington, and Haym Solomon.
First there was the Russians, then there was the lightning war.